Hello, my name is Irene Lynch Fannon and I am a Professor of Corporate Law at the University College Cork School of Law. I teach company law to undergraduates. I also specialise in corporate insolvency and restructuring, and so I teach a comparative course in European corporate restructuring and insolvency to master's level. And I also teach a course called Contemporary Issues in Corporate Law, which looks at the modern corporation in our society today and at some of the interesting questions which have arisen because of the power of corporations. So just to begin, in our company law course, we start with the position of a small business person and create a context in which we talk about the limited liability company as a business vehicle. And how this works is that we imagine ourselves as being a small business trader, thinking of starting up a business, we'll say somewhere near the university, say a small coffee shop. If I have a premises that's somewhere near the university, I can start my business in my premises once I get clearance in terms of health and safety issues as what we call a sole trader. And in that situation, I own the premises, I have my license to start a commercial business from the premises, I import or buy coffee, I hire perhaps one or two students as employees, and there is no difference as a sole trader between my own business assets or my own family or personal assets and the business. And so that means that if the business doesn't do well, I will personally carry the risks of failure. Alternatively, I can establish a limited liability company, which is very easy to do in Ireland. And so I effectively create a new separate legal persona in which I run my business. So if we set up our limited liability company in Ireland and call it the New Coffee Company Limited, I have set up a separate business personality. And this allows me to separate the assets and the risks of the business from my own personal assets. So the limited liability company is a legal invention of Victorian times. And since that time, as you know, if you look around the world, you will see that the limited liability company has become one of the most important ways, not only of running a business, but has also become one of the most important things in society. And that is why a former president of Columbia University, Nicholas Butler, describes the limited liability company as one of the greatest inventions since the wheel. So how does this work in reality? Well, I've started my new legal entity. It's called the New Coffee Company Limited. And so once I've set up this, if you like, fake persona, the New Coffee Company Limited will rent the premises from me as the landlady. And so it will rent the, say, what was a living room or a kitchen as a coffee shop. It will hire the students who are going to be the employees, and it will trade with the other students and staff of the university who are now its customers. And so the difference here is that instead of my family assets or my own personal assets being on the line about the business, the New Coffee Company Limited will be the entity that has the contracts with me as a landlady for the premises, with the students as employees, and with the customers who are coming into the shop to buy coffee and so forth. And that is really the essence of a limited liability company. And if you come to UCC and take company law, which many students do, you will learn all about how that works and why the law allows us to do this. And then if we get bigger, how this works now is that in company law you have two very important players in the company, and those are the directors and the shareholders. So I'm still the business person, but I have set up New Coffee Company Limited. So I want to be able to control New Coffee Company Limited. So I will get the company to appoint me as a director on the board. And so as a director on the board of New Coffee Company Limited, I will make the day-to-day decisions about how the business is run. And because I also own the business, I will be a shareholder in the New Coffee Company. And this brings us to two other really good legal inventions. And that is the invention of the share. So the share basically is a piece of ownership of a company. And being a shareholder gives an individual rights of control, rights to vote in general meetings as to how the company is run. And the other important legal invention is the idea of the director. So you can be appointed as a director of the company, and once you are a director of a company, the law has set up a whole range of duties and obligations which directors owe to their company. So effectively, the shareholder as owner will be able to control the actions of the company, of the directors and the company. So that's the theory anyway. But what's really good about the share is that if I start to grow my business, it gets really successful, and say, for example, I want to set up a coffee shop in Cork City and then perhaps down in Kerry for summer business, I can create and attract more investment in my company by dividing the ownership of the company in even more shares and selling those shares to investors. Or even if I don't need outside investment, I can divide the business of the company into more pieces of ownership so I can share the ownership with my children and grandchildren. And that is how family businesses are grown. I can also, if I want to set up different coffee shops, I can create different parts of my business by creating what we call subsidiaries. So I could have New Coffee Company Number 2 Limited, being the company that owns the premises in the city. I could have New Coffee Company Number 3 Limited, being the company that owns the business in Kerry, and so on and so on. And these are all legal concepts that have facilitated the growth of business. And so you start with just the one limited liability company, and it gets bigger and bigger and can end up looking like this. So here's New Coffee Company Limited in the center. It is what we call a parent company. And then you can see we have subsidiary 2, New Coffee Company Limited 2, New Coffee Company Limited 3, New Coffee Company Limited 4, and so on and so on. And this very simple legal structure also allows me to create subsidiaries in other countries. So for example, if I was an American multinational company, I could create an Irish subsidiary, we'll say in this case subsidiary number 4. The parent company is based in the United States. It controls the actions of the subsidiary, but nevertheless the subsidiary is separate. It's an Irish registered company and it is governed by Irish law. So as you know, in Cork we have quite a lot of multinational companies, originally mostly from the United States, but now some significant European-based companies whose parent company is in the United States or some other European country like Sweden. And then you have subsidiaries in Ireland for particular reasons. And this allows companies to get bigger and bigger by operating these simple legal structures. So that's just a brief introduction to the sorts of things that you will be learning about in company law. In other words, how you create a separate legal entity, the theory about a separate corporate entity, what shareholders do, what sorts of rights they have, what directors do, how you create subsidiaries, how the international aspect of corporate growth works. And that brings me to the second course, which I teach to undergraduates, and it's also available to postgraduates, called Contemporary Issues in Corporate Law, where we explore the issues that have arisen in contemporary society because of the wealth and power behind the modern corporation. And so we look at things like supply chain and supply chain ethics. And so, for example, you will be familiar with the fair trade coffee movement. And that is designed to ensure that multinational corporations who trade, we'll say, in coffee, source and grow their coffee ethically. And we talk about how we make that happen, how the fair trade movement works. We also talk about the power structures or control structures in multinational companies. We talk about tax, we talk about labour rights, and we talk about corporate ethics generally. So going from the very start, when we look at how the law sets up or allows us to set up limited liability companies, I've ended this presentation at the other end, where we are dealing with big companies and the sorts of issues that have arisen in modern society. So I hope I'll see you in the law school at University College Cork. Thank you for listening.